All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Bray, and I am the current chair of the EAC in Lower Makefield Township. And it's a pleasure to welcome you all on this lovely, brisk fall morning. And before I begin, I want to talk to you just briefly about some of the programs that we're going to be presenting soon. Next year, early in January, we're going to have another one of our very, very popular styrofoam collections. And we hold these 3 times a year. And with the styrofoam that we collect, we actually take it to a processor in Bristol called Ray Bob, and they reconfigure and reuse it, and they ship also some of it to Canada. So it's actually one of our very popular programs. The one we held in January, we had 80 50-gallon bags filled with styrofoam. And then we rent a truck, we load the truck up and take it to Bristol. So anyway, people come and they say, and especially the one we hold after the holidays. So last year, I think it was 120 bags. So it's very, very popular, and it's a good way of getting rid of this big, bulky stuff that people don't know what to do with. In February 14th, Valentine's Day, we hold an annual Valentine's Day lecture, and we're going to repeat the one from last year because it was so popular. And we also, as part of that, we give away a lovely box of chocolates to the person's birthday who is closest to Valentine's Day. And last year's winner is with us today, Jim Driscoll, okay?
Next year too.
Now, actually, when we have a disclaimer in the beginning, and that said, Jim, you can't win it this year. Okay, so anyway. And Naughty by Nature by Mike Wilbacher, who is a citizen scientist, and it's all about love in the animal kingdom. PG-13, okay, so you don't have to worry about that, but it was incredibly popular last year. We're also, with one of our new members who is involved in the fashion industry, we're going to have a lecture on fast fashion. When you get home and you take your shirt off or anything, look at the label and see what's on it, okay? Mostly plastic these days, okay? So anyway, we're going to have a very interesting lecture about that. And what we're going to be doing is talking to the board next year, and we would like to proclaim a Birdtown, PA Day in Lower Makefield Township. And what we're thinking about doing it is having a large children's program in the morning, either here or at the community center, and then in the afternoon have a bird presentation, a bird of prey presentation, and this time from Mercer County Wildlife. We've already used ARC and the master falconer, Gregory Martell. And last but not least, we're going to see if we can get a presenter for AI and the electric grid. People are not aware of the amount of supercomputer and energy required for the AI program to actually work. And it's a real issue with a lot of small towns in America where these supercomputer companies have moved in and they're actually upsetting the electrical grid. So again, with Birdtown now part of us, which was about 1.5 years ago, we're giving probably around 8 lectures or presentations a year. So look, wherever you're networking, and hopefully you'll come. So enough being said about that. The last thing I want to say is, before the presentation starts, is that if you enjoy coming to these seminars and presentations, let the Board of Supervisors know. They're always in line for happy talk, okay? And they have generously provided us a budget large enough to make events like this happen. So now that's the end of my little spiel. Jean Bray, the LMT Birdtown Chair, is now going to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you all for coming.
For me, this is a huge pleasure because Juanita Hummel is one of the smartest people about the environment and birds that I know, and we're going to all learn a whole lot more about birds than we thought we would ever know. I'm going to read you Juanita's bio. It's pretty short, and it's all right. So, Juanita Hummel is a retired lab researcher turned citizen scientist who volunteers with many local land trusts and conservation organizations. Originally from Canada, she has lived on the unique Sourland Mountain in New Jersey for 40 years. She's a longtime birder, past president of Washington Crossing Audubon Society, a trained native plant naturalist, a current board member and education committee chair at Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, and a certified Pennsylvania master naturalist. And she says in her spare time, she enjoys eco-traveling to observe birds in their native habitats in various parts of the world. And she's just knows everything about birds, so you're going to no pressure, no pressure. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Juanita to start her lecture. And thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you so much for that really over-the-top introduction. Yeah, a lot of pressure. I am a retired scientist, and I really enjoy being able to talk to people like this. Thank you so much to the people of Pennsylvania Birdtown for helping to spread the good word about birds and what they need in terms of habitat preservation in your communities. I think that's a wonderful effort. And thanks also to Lower Makefield Township and the Environmental Commission, who are part of that effort as well. So it's really good to be here. This is a presentation that's brand new, maybe a little rough around the edges. I haven't given this one before. And it was the result of a long, wonderful talk with Jean and Jim over coffee in Lambertville when we were trying to, excuse me, figure out what I was going to talk to you about. And so we'll be doing a little bit of hopping around, but I hope that you learned something from it, at least one thing. It doesn't have to be a lot of things, but at least one thing you didn't know before, and I hope that you enjoy the photos. So for the purposes of today's, when we're talking about bird homes today, I'm thinking about homes the way we humans often do, which is where people live with their families, and often the first reason why you start looking for a home is if you're planning a family. So some birds are very much like that in some ways. Some birds live in the same place all the time, and other birds travel very long distances to find that special place to go to raise their families, and we're going to be talking about both of those things today. So this is my habitat. This is what my front yard on the Sourland Mountain in New Jersey looks like. It's part of the largest contiguous deep canopy forest remaining in central New Jersey, and it's under threat. We have the biggest threat. We have invasive species, of course, which my husband, now that he's retired, spends all day, every day going to war on, literally, in our little 4 acres on the mountain. We live right next to a nature preserve. We've kind of moved into that, and we're now starting to take stuff out of there too. But we've got the emerald ash borer, like something that's affecting people here in Pennsylvania as well, that is causing the canopy to disappear. Living in a canopy forest, there are certain birds that only breed in canopy forests. Scarlet tanagers are an example. Broad-winged hawks are another example. We've had those nesting near our house. There's only one of 2 or 3 pairs in that part of New Jersey. They also need the canopy. They're mid-canopy nesters, and they hunt under the canopy. And they're especially fond of snakes, and there's lots of rocks up there. It's old volcanic activity with lots of diabase rocks. But the canopy is starting to disappear, so that's a problem. That's a big problem. But this is happening all over the world, so we'll talk about some of that. So first, okay, make sure that everything works here. Okay, in preparation for this, I visited a place in Ontario. We have, Jean mentioned, we're originally from Canada, and we do have a place in southern Ontario. It's a little bit like Cape May, New Jersey, in that it is a bird migration trap. Lots of birds go there and pass through in the fall and the spring. And there was a gentleman called Doug Harness who retired from working in the conservation business in 1980 and decided he was going to spend his retirement building birdhouses. So he started this birdhouse city in 1980, and it became a tourist attraction, a very touristy area in Prince Edward County, Ontario. And it's now become a community effort, so people will donate. It's been taken over by an organization called Quinte Conservation. It's a land trust, and it's also conservation authority for all of Prince Edward County, doing a lot of good work up there. And they've taken it over. So people, some businesses donate money to have their, whoops, how did that? Donate money to have their businesses represented, and there are now over 100 birdhouses. I won't show them all to you, but I'll just show you a few examples. So the first one is, let's see if I can make this work. There it is. Okay, so I'll try it on. Oh, why is it flipping? Okay, we may have to, this is a new system for me. So this one up here is, this is a model of a hotel. That was the first birdhouse that Doug made and put up. But birds have a lot of choices of places to live. They can have church, or they could live in the town hall if they wanted to. Most of these are more for purple martins, you can tell by the multiple holes. But we'll talk about those a little bit later. Or you could have a more modest cottage if you like. Some people like the modern design of house, and some people prefer a more classical style mansion. So do some birds. Notice that there is a little birdhouse down here, much more modest birdhouse attached to the pole of this this birdhouse, and there are a few of those, and you'll find out later that this is where the birds really like to live. They don't want all this. They don't need all this fancy stuff. I love this one. There's still an old-fashioned drive-in. Okay. That's weird. What happened? Okay. Technical difficulties. I don't think we're going to have any of those. Oh, there we go. Okay. Disaster averted, I hope. Okay, so we'll move. Okay, so the drive-in, I love the movie that's showing on the screen. You just watch reruns all day of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Or you can, if you're a bird, you can choose the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The day we were there, this was in October, so admittedly not high bird season, but nobody had checked into the local hospital. However, on the other side of the pole here, you can see here, is one of those little more modest birdhouses, and there was evidence that a bird had lived in there, and that one looked like it might have been a bluebird based on the nesting material I could see inside the box. But this was the most popular birdhouse at the preserve. I'm not pressing these buttons, I'm telling you. Was this one here. It was off in a corner in the edge of the woods, clearly very beat up, but obviously several generations of house wrens had grown up in this one, probably in the same season. They can nest up to 5 times a year in a bird. They're very prolific. But this is what they prefer, that one right there. So if you want to put up birdhouses for your birds, don't go all out. Just throw a few boards together, make a hole, and they will come. But why do birds live in birdhouses? Do you think there were birdhouses around when birds first appeared on the planet? I don't think so. So, in fact, there aren't very many birds living there. Most of them are house wrens, with the occasional bluebird. But Quinte Conservation has taken this place, which has become a tourist destination now up there, with 108 birdhouses. Some of them are just amazing models of various buildings, some of the historic buildings in town. But they've taken the opportunity to put up some of these signs. They've planted pollinator plants. They've mowed trails through meadows. And they're giving people information about how to improve their own backyard habitat. So it's become a good education resource, even though there aren't that many birds living there. And the fact is that there are only about a handful of birds that actually live in birdhouses. So you're going to house wrens and chickadees. We'll see a few of those. This is a little thing, speaking about AI and how much electricity uses. I used AI just for the heck of it to produce this little video. You may not be able to, I'm going to turn, make sure my sound is up maximally. Oh, there it goes. So this is not a real bird. I think it was based on the robin redbreast that you find in England and other parts of Eastern Europe. But what I wanted to illustrate here was two things. First of all, AI is very stereotypical. This is one of the problems with AI currently, is that it provides very stereotypical images of almost anything. So here we've got the stereotype of the bird with a nest in a tree. And actually, while it's true that about 75% of the world's birds do live in a forested environment, not all of them live in trees, so even in the forest, so. No, okay, no, there, okay. Yes, that is the next slide I'm getting. Okay, so let's have a look at what has happened to our forests. And so starting in the upper left-hand corner, that's in 1630, that's about the time when the European colonists first arrived in North America, and the entire eastern part of the United States was forest, dense, contiguous forest. And through the years, that forest began to disappear. Around the time, and it was as the European colonists arrived, they started clearing trees for timber. Some cases, they're building ships for agriculture and so forth. Around, okay, why does it go off like that? Okay, I have no idea why that happened. Come on. Okay, here we go. Oops. All right, we'll get through this. Oh dear. Now what has happened? This button on the, that one down there.
That slideshow down there.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know why
If you feel
it.
more comfortable using arrow, that's fine. Just use the arrow,
Use the arrow.
up and down.
Okay. Yeah, that might work a little better for me. Although this is handy, but if I have to move around especially. Okay, so in, maybe I can use my cursor too. Okay, so look here. Okay, there we go. So in about 1850, that's when the Industrial Revolution reached the Americas, or reached North America. And then you start to see little red dots appearing along here. That shows where urban centers are starting to appear. And slowly, until we get to 2020, where we see, so we've got croplands. The forest is being cut down for croplands. In some places where they're just cutting down trees for the timber and for making paper and things like that, you end up with shrublands, which are a useful habitat for some birds, but unfortunately not for all birds. And of course, the red dots, which are really very prominent along here, especially along the East Coast, but also appearing in other parts of the country, are the urbanized centers. But let's just see if we can do this. Okay, so if you compare 1630 with 2020, you can see that the eastern forest, once dense and pristine and intact, is now, in many cases, gone. And where it isn't completely gone, it's been fragmented. And fragmentation of forests is very bad for, fragmentation of any habitat type is very bad for the animals that live there because it forces them into smaller and smaller pockets if they even survive at all, and they become genetically less varied, which leads to greater problems with their health and also the future generations. So this is a very bad thing that has happened to our eastern forests. And so why do birds need birdhouses? Well, some of them, the ones that use trees, have no trees, or there aren't enough trees to meet the demand. So are birdhouses, should we have birdhouses? Are they a good thing for birds? The answer is yes and no. So let's explore that a little bit. Just want to have a look at the remaining pristine forests in the world. The biggest one is up in Canada here. The Canadian boreal forest is the largest intact forest in the world. There are some other large forests, the Amazon, we know what's happening there. They're slashing and burning that to put in palm oil plantations and other terrible uses, actually. Palm oil is not good for people, and it's not good for the birds either, secondarily. The Russian boreal forest, well, where does the oil in Russia come from? A lot of it comes from that area up there. So the picture is not good. Now, the boreal forest in Canada is mostly intact, but unfortunately it's under some pressure as well because it's being chipped away at the bottom end here, at the southern end for lumber and paper. And also up here, particularly in the province of Alberta, they have discovered oil. It's in the form of the so-called tar sands, which is oil that doesn't come shooting out of the ground when you put a well in, but it's all mixed with a bunch of debris like sand. It's difficult to remove. But as oil prices increase and as demand for fossil fuels increases, it's become now economically feasible to process this for oil. And that requires removing all the trees on top, large areas, and scooping up the earth underneath. So that forest will not ever regenerate in that area. It's gone forever. And there's big active groups up in Canada that are trying to fight this, but they're fighting a losing battle in some cases. So, of the few birds that use birdhouses, and this is definitely a case where people, hundreds, thousands of people across the eastern United States putting up birdhouses for bluebirds has made a difference. That definitely has brought bluebirds back from the brink of extinction to the point where they're now living where they normally should be able to live, which is in natural tree cavities. And there's a place where I do bird surveys with Washington Crossing Audubon. It's one of the newer preserves in Hopewell Township called Mount Rose Preserve, where we found there are no bluebird houses area. It hasn't been developed to that extent yet where they put up any bluebird houses, but there's a copse of dead, unsightly trees where these bluebirds have set up their nests. There's 2 pairs at least nesting there. And the land managers don't like to see dead trees, dead ugly trees in their landscapes. So we had to bring them out and show them the bluebirds, and there were also red-bellied woodpeckers in there, and show them the indigo buntings that were finding insects to eat in there, and tell them, please do not cut down these dead, ugly trees. They're not, when you see them as what they are, which is a source of housing and food for birds, you might realize why they should be left there. And they can also be an educational, yes, they're unsightly, but put up a sign and explain to people what's going on, and then it takes on a whole different appearance. This is a bluebird nest on the right. They use a lot of grasses in their nests. And this one was in my yard. We recently had bluebirds. This is a good side effect, if there is one, of losing some of your forest canopy, is that when the woods open up like this, birds like bluebirds can move in instead of the ones that were there before. It's kind of a painful exchange, though, I have to say. Another bird that, no, this is the one I want. Tree swallows. Why do you think they call tree swallows? Tree swallows because their normal house is in a tree, of course. They live inside the tree in tree cavities. And they actually still do that, especially in the western states. The tree swallow there, or when you get towards the center part of the country, mostly live in trees still. But they have taken to living in bluebird houses especially, and the reason is because their trees are, the number of trees that are dead and left standing, that have been left standing long enough to develop holes and hollows and cavities and that have had birds living in them. They don't make their own, they use other people's, like woodpecker holes and things like that. But if they had plenty of trees or enough trees, they'd be able to continue to live in trees and live up to their names. There's a chickadee. Well, gee. This is a chickadee, of course, and this is a chickadee nest, and they will also use boxes. I would gladly sleep on a chickadee nest. It's a big pile of moss, nice and cushy with just a little nest cup at the top. They will use boxes very readily, but they don't need them. They also use tree cavities if there's no chickadee boxes. Okay, now here's the guy you're most likely to find if you have bird boxes and you live in a lightly wooded environment, open woods especially, you're going to find house wren. The house wrens, in fact, if you have 5 bird boxes on your property, you'll have one house wren building nests in all 5 of those boxes. The males build the nest, bring the female to see it, but they want every box in the area. And they're a real nuisance. And this one I'm going to show you is not doing what you think he's doing here. So let's see if I can get this to the audio is, be quiet. So it's going, they often go in the top there instead of the hole. Keep going. There's more. What happened? Okay. Nope. No. Okay. More technical difficulties. Oh, maybe I have to use over here. Let's try this. No. No. Yeah, we'll get. Okay, I don't know, but what? I'll try from here. Let's try it from the computer. Okay. It's listening and it's putting in captions. Oh, this is fun. This is all new for me. I've never had this happen before. See? Now you can see. If you can't hear me, you can see me now. Maybe I should have put that on, but I'll try and get rid of it in a minute. Okay, here we go. So, fortunately, I have a sense of humor. Okay, I'm just going to try and one more time run this little video. Okay, so he goes in. All right, he goes in the top there. It's stopped in the middle. And he'll, okay, you can hear his little song there, a little territorial song. He's saying, "This is my house." Now he's going to go in the hole. Now, you notice he isn't carrying anything in his bill when he goes in. But he is when he comes out. So what he's actually doing there is dismantling another bird's nest so that he can put his nest in there. And this is why I hate it every year when the house wrens come back. Okay. Okay, this is another bird that you must build housing for. In the eastern part of the United States, purple martins need houses. They don't nest in natural tree cavities, even though their ancestors did. The western subspecies of purple martins still use natural tree cavities, but these birds do not. And that's because the indigenous people, going back many thousands of years, realized the value of purple martins as insect eaters. And they encouraged them to come near their villages and encampments, the places where they were living, to help with insect control and make life more bearable. And they used gourds, of course, and you still see people who use gourds in bunches because they are colony nesters, and that's what they use today. And if you don't have houses for these birds, you won't have these birds. So they become totally dependent on houses. So the best place to put these is not where you saw in the birdhouse city, but in the middle of a big open field where there's nothing else around them, a little bit higher, well, quite a bit higher actually, than you saw in the birdhouse city, and then you will attract martins. And almost always, if you put those houses up within a year or two, you're going to have martins. And the population will expand depending on how many houses you have for them. So that's a very, if you're going to put up any birdhouses at all, that's a good one. Another cavity nester, red-bellied woodpecker. This is a male. He seems, on the right-hand side, they're very pleased with his new house. This is a northern flicker, also a cavity nester, also a male. Why does that just go when I'm not even doing anything? Okay, you can tell he's a male because he has a black mustache. I like this bird because you can always tell whether you're looking at a male or a female. And in many woodpecker families, it's the male who excavates the nest, and then the wife just moves in and takes care of the indoor housekeeping. This is one of my favorite birds. This is a little red morph screech owl that moved into a dead shagbark hickory at the end of my driveway. And it was around for several months. I had great hopes that I was going to watch a family of little owls grow up, but unfortunately around middle of January, my neighbor called me and said, Juanita, I have these feathers on my lawn. Would you come and tell me what they are? And so I went over and looked, and sure enough, it was the feathers from this little bird. Don't know what happened to it. One of two things: it could have been caught and mangled by a larger owl like great horns. They do eat screech owls if they can catch them. But the other thing that probably happened, I think more probably happened given what I saw on the ground, was that it was hit by a car. And this happens to a lot of owls. It's amazing. Something like 80 million birds in the United States are killed every year being hit by cars. Why does a bird get hit by a car? It's mostly raptors and owls. They have binocular vision. They don't have good peripheral vision. And it's really easy to see prey crossing the road. You see little mice and voles all the time crossing the road at night. They go after them. They don't see the car coming. I've had near misses twice with red-tailed hawks that came within inches of my windshield. And several times I had these little screech owls fly across the road. So I'm afraid that he was taken out by a car. It's very heartbreaking. And shortly after that, well, a couple years later, the tree fell down anyway, so. This is another little red morph screech owl that was at Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve. It was living in a box. The box was intended for wood ducks. And if any of you been to Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, they have, oh great, they have the bridge that goes over Pidcock Creek, and this box was located near the creek. They were hoping to have some wood ducks nest in the box. And if any of you ever hope to see wood ducks nesting in a box that's anywhere near where you're going to see them, well, you just give up that hope, because wood ducks do not want to be seen by people. However, the boxes are sometimes used by other animals, and like this little guy here, we think could have been a gal. I shouldn't call it a guy. He looks kind of guyish to me, because small, but but it's just fur. There we go again. See, I didn't do a thing. Not my fault, I swear. Can I get it back? Yeah, this is not working either. There, okay. So continue with my story about this one. So spring came, and we again had high hopes that we were going to have a family of screech owls. But unfortunately, our FEMA funds from the state came through, and they started doing some repairs to the creek gates that are part of the deer exclosure we have around the preserve, and they're just downstream from where this box was located. And with all that commotion going on, the machinery, all the people, the little owl went away. We don't know where he went. We hope he went someplace else on the preserve, but nobody ever found him. But the thing is, they don't you have to if you're going to put up a box, it has to be in the right place where it won't be disturbed by people, because most of these birds do not really want to be living right next to people, and they get very, and especially if they're going to raise a family, they become very protective. This is another use of dead trees by owls. These are bare-legged owls. There's the male, the female's the bigger one on the right, and the little guy, I know this is because there are two of them, is on the left. They're living in a hollow palm tree in Cuba. They're a Cuban endemic species. And they have a lot of these trees in Cuba because the tops blow off in hurricanes, they've tropical storms and things like that, and then the trunk gets hollowed out, and this is where these animals live. And there's quite a few birds that live in hollow trees. We'll see a few more. But these little owls are actually in a good place right now. And the reason they're in a good place is because Cuba, large swaths of Cuba right now are still pristine. They do have some developed areas, mostly populated in the wintertime by Canadian tourists and also some tourists from Britain, but there are no Americans. It's very difficult for an American to go there. And because of that, there have not been any big developments. The whole place would turn into, I'm sure, one gigantic beach resort if American developers got their talons into it. A little bird pun there. So this is, so there's still lots of pristine environment. That's another, if that Cuba ever does open up, it's going to be really, the preservationists are really going to have their work cut out for them. But this is what it looks like. I just fell in love with those big brown eyes. I think that this is the female. She's just a darling bird. This is another bird that used to live in tree cavities, the barn owl. Why is it called the barn owl? Because after a lot of the trees, especially in eastern North America, were cut down, it found that it could live in barns instead. But it was the old-fashioned kind of barn, or in silos. And those have largely disappeared from the landscape, too. And as a result of that, the barn owl has no place else to go, especially in a densely populated state like New Jersey, where I live. You can hardly find a barn owl. This one is a captive. It was part of, I did Greg Martell ever bring one of these to one of your presentations? Yeah, she's a female barn owl. You can see she's got tethers on the bottom. I did see one in a tree in Cuba, another place, but fortunately they're widely distributed around the world. They're a global species bird, and their populations are not endangered, but I think they may be eventually extirpated in New Jersey and also parts of the other eastern states because they just don't have proper, they're a big owl and they need a big tree, a big old dead tree. Not something we like. This is a great horned owl. This is about February. Gee, why does it go 2 slides at a time? Okay, and they like to sit out in the winter because at this point in they already have eggs and possibly nestlings in the nest. The male will sit out to deter predators, and so you're more likely to see a great horned owl sitting out at that time of year, February, March, than any other time. And they nest in trees. That's a cute little nestling over there. He's just starting to get his adult plumage around his eyes, but look at the little ears, little fuzzy gray ears, absolutely adorable. So what kind of predators is the owl looking for? Things like chipmunks. Did you know that chipmunks eat eggs and they also eat nestlings? They're nasty, so he's just there saying, don't you dare try this with my family. Another bird that used to live in colonies in tall, dead, hollow trees, which are chimney swifts. And these are birds that pretty much come up out of their chimneys and fly all day and then go back. They can't perch horizontally like other birds can. They can only perch vertically. When a lot of these trees were cut down, as we saw after the Industrial Revolution, they moved to large chimneys, particularly chimneys that were not being used or that were not being used during the summertime when they were breeding. But now those chimneys are disappearing as well. And people who have houses with suitably sized chimneys are blocking them off to keep things out, including the chimney swifts. So another good thing, if you have to buy, second after the purple martin boxes, you can build a chimney swift tower. So that would be a good thing. Or better yet, restore our forests and get our to all the trees back for the next few generations from now. It's what's going to take, though. Here's the bird inside its tower, and there's its precariously perched little nestlings on the right. I don't know how they ever survive. Sometimes they do. I know a couple of people who have chimney swifts in their home chimneys, and they do. These poor little nestlings do sometimes end up down the fireplace or whatever. But if they do, you can bring them to Mercer County Wildlife, and they will help you with that. I just had to throw this in. This is a Stygian owl. It's one of the largest owls. And this is not a painting. This is actually a photograph that I took in Colombia, and this is exactly what this owl looks like. It looks like all kind of blurry and mysterious. When its eyes are open, they're bright orange. This one is thought in many cultures to be a harbinger of death and witchcraft, and it is subject to a great deal of persecution. So they're widespread from Mexico all the way down through some of the Caribbean islands down to South America, but hardly anybody ever sees them, and I've been lucky to see 2 of them. This one I just had to throw in because I think this is the most amazing bird I've ever seen, actually. This is a burrowing owl. This picture was taken in South Dakota, where these burrowing owls out west live in prairie dog burrows. The ranchers out there, you can see what the grasslands in the Great Plains look like now. They're all cropland, grazing land, etc. A lot of them are gone. Farmers and ranchers don't like prairie dog holes, which is where these birds live in the West, and so they poison the prairie dogs to kill them, which also kills the owls. So that particular one, I'll leave that one because I'm going there next. That particular one was in a national park. But there is a small population of, some population of burrowing owls in Florida, and this one is in a place called Brian Piccolo Park, which is a huge sports complex. It has a hockey rink and basketball courts and baseball fields and everything. And they discovered while they were building this that they had a burrowing owl colony that was nesting there. And now they take great pride in it. It's one of the staff go out every year. You can see, there's my cursor. So right there, that little spot, that's a prairie dog head. A prairie dog, that's a burrowing owl head. Okay, and they put a little fence around it, and they even put a little perch for it, and here's what it looks like. Absolutely adorable. And I just love this shot of the eye of the intense owl eye. It's just incredible. Oh, this is just a warbling vireo nest. I was going to take that slide out, but since it's here, this is one of my favorite nest types. It's built suspended from a branch, and it looks like a baseball when you look up at it. It's so smoothly, they've got these large, broadleaf vegetation all wound around it. Some birds these are birds that normally would live in the tops of tall trees. This is an osprey. Osprey almost went extinct due to DDT. They're now rebounding, and they're now starting to use trees again to make their nests. They will use other human constructions too. I just want you to look at this guy over here. I don't know how tall he is, maybe 5'10", 6 feet maybe. And look at how tall this osprey nest is. And this is what it looks like in close-up. That is not the osprey. This is what it looks like in close-up. It's full of seaweed and stuff like that. The ospreys will keep on adding to this nest for as long as they use it, for many years, and they can get really, really huge. This is an old picture of an eagle nest, but I like it because it shows the 2 chicks here. This is built in an old power pylon across for wires crossing the Raritan River. JCP&L, the birds have been there forever. They had a nest destroyed by a storm in the winter. They came back the next year and they built on the other side of the pylon, so they're really vested in this place. And when JCP&L came in and replaced the pylon, they made a special custom-made platform for these eagles. And they came back, built their nest there, and now they're much safer. So now I guess the slide thing wants me to go to Newfoundland, so here we are. This is a place I love. It has a population of about 529,000 people and 110,000 moose. That's one moose per 5 people. Moose are not, in fact, native to Newfoundland. They were introduced as a game species back around the turn of the 19th century. And if you think that deer are bad at eating 7 to 10 pounds of vegetation a day, moose eat about 60 to 70 pounds of vegetation a day. And they're causing a lot of deforestation. And a lot of damage. But this part here, all along the coast here, this is Newfoundland down here. This is a province in the eastern part of, off the eastern shore of Canada. And all of this area here is primo breeding habitat for pelagic birds. Pelagic birds are birds that spend most of their life at sea, and they only come to land to raise their families. Some of them never stop flying over the water until that brief period of time when they come to breed. And what is going on here is that they discovered oil on the Grand Banks, which is also a very good fishery used by not just people from Canada, but also people from across the ocean in Northern Europe and even Asia come to fish there, and they discovered oil. So all of this here is either current oil drilling operations, future oil drilling operations, or places of interest. And after visiting there, and I'll show you some pictures of what the breeding colonies look like, I can't imagine what would happen if there were an oil spill there. It would be absolutely disastrous. This is Gull Island in Witless Bay. This is a bird apartment house. This is what it looks like in the winter when there are no birds there. And this is what it looks like during the summer when the breeding birds arrive. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them. And this is one of the places that would be affected by an oil spill. So, no. There. Okay, so up here in the tree line live a bird called Leach's storm petrel. They live underground, and they actually hunt at night. In the middle here are the puffins. This is the largest puffin colony in North America. There are about 250,000 breeding pairs of puffins on this island alone. And every little dot that you see here in this particular picture is a puffin. When you go lower down, you can't really see it in this picture, but there are common murres. A little bit lower, you find kittiwakes. A little bit farther down, you find things like razorbill auks. These are all pelagic species. And they each have their own, floor to live on, if you want to look at it that way. This is the Leach's storm petrel. This map just shows where it lives. It normally flies over the ocean, sometimes landing on water, for all but about a month when it spends on its breeding grounds. It has very tiny feet. And one of its major problems is light pollution. This picture was taken on a boat that our tour guide was on. When they're migrating, especially towards shore to breed, they get very confused by lights. So lights on boats, lights on towns along the water, and they sometimes end up getting grounded and they can't get up again. They also have very tiny feet. They're meant to be in the air or on water, not on ground. They just don't know what to do. And lights, since they're nocturnal creatures mostly, they don't know what to do when confronted with lights that aren't the moon or the stars that they use for guidance. Who doesn't love puffins? They're absolutely adorable. They also spend most of their time at sea until they come to breed. And here are some that are breeding. And you can see these holes back here are burrows. They live underground and about 3 feet in, and that's where they put their eggs. These are common murres on the next level. Each pair of common murres has 1 square foot of real estate to itself. How they manage, I don't know. Look at all the guano, oh my goodness. But they look kind of like penguins, except they do have these beautiful markings on their face, and they sit upright and incubate their eggs like penguins. So I don't know how closely related they are, but they look very similar. And these nests jammed in by the hundreds of thousands in some of the colonies. This is a really interesting bird that just started breeding in Newfoundland in 1970. It's a northern fulmar. This is called the fowl bird. That's what the name means, because it has a special gland in its stomach that it can use to repel predators. It just vomits up this horrible mix of waxy, greasy secretions, and apparently it's very effective. People who have had this happen to them found that it really works very well. But otherwise, they use this secretion for food. Because it's in their stomach, they can actually digest. It doesn't seem to bother them at all, which is a good thing. But they do come to, these are birds that spend all their time in the air except when they're diving to get fish. They even sleep in the air. They're just constantly cruising the open oceans, except for this one time of year when they come to ground. This shows where they go when they're not breeding. They're just basically just cruising around. They're absolutely beautiful birds, but I'm not going to mess with them. And here we have a mixture of herring gulls and the thugs of the gull world, the blackback gulls. These don't live here. They live on the mainland. Every so often they get hungry and they come across to Gull Island, which really should not be called Gull Island, but that's what they call it, to do a little raid. And you can see here, we've got a bunch of gulls up here, a mixture of herring and great black-backed, and everybody is in a panic up there. Now I wanted to show you this first. So you can see this one here has something in its mouth, and of course, there's the big reveal, which you already saw. It's a murre egg. You can tell by the color, murres have blue eggs. Murres, their eggs are on top of the ground. The gulls can grab them. They will also take chicks. They can't get the puffin eggs, but they can get the puffin chicks later on. And this happens, we saw this, we were out above there cruising around that island for maybe an hour and a half or something, and this happened a couple of times. There's also an eagle colony that will occasionally come in and raid them. These birds, this is really heartbreaking because puffins, all of these pelagic birds have 1 egg per year. That's all, they get 1 chance at it. And to see the puffin, to see them disappearing is awful. The puffins, and puffins are 5 years old before they even lay their first egg. So I don't know why there are so many of these birds, but somehow they have adapted to this. But one of the things they could not adapt to would be an oil spill. That would wipe out a generation of these birds, at least. Okay, this is an interesting bird. It does not nest there. This is sooty shearwater, actually nests in the southern hemisphere, and it goes to the Arctic, where it never really gets above 50 degrees, at least the area we were, for the summer. And this is an Arctic tern, which does the exact opposite. It nests in the Arctic and goes to Antarctica for the winter. So, each bird, you can't make them change their habits. That's what they do. You can tell this is an Arctic tern. It looks very much like a lot of the other terns, but the Arctic terns have extremely short legs. So they look like they're hunched down like that. This just shows the Arctic tern, of course. Probably a lot of you know this, has the longest migration of any animal on Earth. So it goes from the Arctic down to the south. That's really an amazing expenditure of energy. This is a northern gannet. There are huge colonies of those too in various places. There are six of the North American, of the 6 colonies of gannets in North America. 3 of them are in Newfoundland, and here's a gannet colony when you can actually see it when there's no fog, and that's rarely. So, that's an unusual picture. And how do the gannets find their way when there's so many gannets to choose from. One parent, both parents don't fish it. The one parent will go and come back. The other parent will go and come back and fish for themselves and their young. And of course, you probably may have seen this in nature programs. When they come back, the male and female do a little checkup. You know, is this really my partner? So they rub their bills together and they intertwine their necks and everything. And it seems to work pretty well. And because I've never seen any of these do the equivalent of, oh my God, I made a terrible mistake. You know, they always seem to be happy with whoever they ended up with anyway. They all look the same to me, so I don't know. Maybe, maybe it's not their mate. Oh dear, this is low. So this is we'll make a quick trip up to the boreal forest here to look at a gull, the only gull that nests in trees. It nests in typically spruce trees like you find up in the lower edges of the boreal forest. But it does come down to watering. You see, it got a little fuzzy chick over here that just fledged. You find other weird birds, weird for what we expect of them here. This is the greater yellowlegs on the left. They don't nest in trees. They nest on the grounds, but for some reason, when they're in that area, they spend a lot of time perched in the tops of trees. This is a Wilson snipe over here, also another bird that you don't normally associate with trees. The theory is they're scanning for predators. I'm not sure how good that is if you're up in a tree and the predator is approaching your nest on the ground. But anyway, I can't argue with them. But it's a beautiful place to see some of these wading birds and birds that you consider to be shorebirds in that part of the world. This is the Arctic tundra. This is 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle. This is Mount Pelly in Nunavut, which is a Canadian, I think it's a province now. It used to be a territory. I believe it's got full provincial status. But this is what the Arctic looks like in summer. This back here is not really a mountain, it's an esker, which is remnants of the last ice age. When the glaciers retreated, they left behind piles of debris that was carried in the melting water. And some of these are quite long. This is one of the taller ones. It's about 650 feet high at its highest point. And we did walk up to the top of that so that we could watch muskox grazing on the tundra, which was really cool. But you see there's this little structure down here, and that is this. This is the marker for the park, carved out of stone and wood in the back. And on top of it is a raven's nest, and they're widespread birds. They nest they're very more numerous in the north, but we have them here. We have them in this area. They're spreading southwards more and more. And in fact, there was even a pair that nested in the train station Hamilton, New Jersey one year. But this is where they go. They look for high places, cliffs and things like this. This is the highest place they could find in a place that has no trees. And there's a chick, one of the chicks in the nest. And this fuzzy stuff here is the undercoat of musk oxen, which they shed in the summertime so that they don't overheat. And they walk through stands of willows, and it all comes off, and all of us spent some time collecting some of that. It's very, very warm and great insulation, and so the raven has used that as insulation in its nest, which I thought was kind of cool. Lapland longspur, this is a bird that nests on the ground in the Arctic. It's sitting on one of those little willows that I mentioned, and here's what its little nest looks like, well insulated around the edges with grasses. They have to find a dry spot. Has anyone ever been to the Arctic here and been on the tundra? It is like a huge bog in the summertime when the first few inches of the permafrost melt down a bit. Well, it's actually not permafrost on top because it melts, but the top layer of ice melts, and it's like walking on a waterbed or something. But the birds can find like higher spots to lay their eggs, and the whole area it's like if you look at it from the air, and I was going to put a slide in, but I forgot. It looks like ponds and lakes. The whole thing's just pocked with water, open water in the summertime. And now the permafrost is melting, and these the water areas are getting larger and larger, and there are very few dry places for the many, many, many species of birds that nest on the ground in the Arctic. So that's another threat that they're facing. Don't know what we can do about that. It's a climate change thing, it's global. I guess we just do the best we can to mitigate the effects. This is another Arctic bird. Come back, come back, come back. Sorry about all this. I should have done a little bit more of a run-through to anticipate this problem earlier. Okay, so this is a snow bunting, and it's not at all like what you see if you go to the Jersey Shore. That's the bird up in the right-hand corner. That's what it looks like when we see it, but here's a beautiful male in his full breeding plumage, black and white, and in his mouth he is carrying a bunch of spiders. So these are, what do they call them, northern wolf spiders, I think. And this is a prime source of food for his nestlings. And where does he live? Well, normally he would live in a burrow made by another creature in the esker that we just saw. But since there's a town nearby, he's decided to make his home in this barrel containing stones. And they use a lot of these in the Arctic. Because of the permafrost, they can't dig holes. So if they want something or they need to put something up in the winter, a sign, they get a barrel, fill it with stones, and stick a pole in that. Sometimes they get blown over in the winds, and so he had his nest way in the back of there. There he is, about to enter. They also use cavities on human dwellings, and interestingly, in the little town we had our lodge in, they go to bird feeders too. I don't think I've ever seen them at bird feeders here in the south, but up there they have a totally different variety of birds, things like redpolls and really cool birds at their bird feeders. Okay, so this actually, we're going back to Newfoundland here. This is a song sparrow that I saw in the southern part of Newfoundland where it's a bit warmer. The thing I like, it's a terrible photo, but look at the number of caterpillars this bird is carrying. These, as people probably know, are a very important source of food for birds everywhere, and this is why we need our insects, our moths, and our butterflies, not just to pollinate flowers, but to feed birds. And are there butterflies in the Arctic? Yes, there are. There are about 36 species of butterfly. This one's a Judd Arctic butterfly. Look at how hairy the body is. Even the legs are hairy here. This is a bird that is adapted to the cold climate by having an extended developmental phase. So from the egg to the butterfly takes more than 2 years. It spends 2 winters as a caterpillar. And for some of the other butterflies, it could be another 2 or 3 years before the caterpillars become a butterfly. They just pause whenever it gets too cold to continue, and continue when the weather warms up. In the place where we were staying, they had 3 weeks, their summer was 3 weeks long, 3 weeks of frost-free weather. That's summer. Of course, you have 24/7 light, so everybody works all day long. Those birds were flying 10 o'clock at night. The birds are still going back and forth with food to their nests. But it's quite a different scene. But nature prevails if given a chance. Okay, so I think I've talked long enough now. I could go on, but I only have an hour. But I just, how do we help birds? And the way to do it is by what you people are doing here at Birdtown is teaching people how to protect their habitats, and by restoring their habitats in the areas where they have been, as much as you can, in the areas where they've been removed, and also removing human-caused hazards. So support land trusts and organizations that are preserving and restoring forests, and those organizations that are creating green corridors. There's a group in Philadelphia that are doing a great job in the city, in the outskirts of the city, making green pathways where wildlife can travel safely. Leave dead trees that are not a hazard in the landscape. There are birds that, I think actually I missed a slide or two. There are birds that live in the ground and use leaves as well, like the ovenbird. Oh, I do have, yes. I have a video at the end of the ovenbird. And birds that live at the base of trees on the ground that also use these dead leaves to camouflage their nests. If you have to cut a tree because it's a hazard, you don't cut the whole tree. There, no. Well, thank you. That was the ovenbird. But just have the whoever's cutting the tree, just top it. So leave about 12 or 15 feet. It becomes a magnificent bird feeder and possibly a birdhouse. And we have a power line right-of-way over part of our property, and when they came in to cut down some hazardous dead ash trees, we just asked them to do that. They were very happy to do it because it takes them less time. You know, I just thought, okay, we'll cut off the top and take that away and leave the rest. Crazy people. You know. But the trees look great. Doesn't even look like anything was cut out now because we still have the trunks there. And this was a few years ago, and they're still looking fine because the wood inside the ash tree especially stays good for quite a long time if you don't lie it down on the ground. Try and reduce your reliance on fossil fuels and support alternative energy development. Jim was just talking earlier about the tremendous amount of electricity that's going to be required as AI becomes a feature of everyday life. Let's make sure that's not powered by fossil fuels, if at all possible. Also be aware of the effect of light pollution at home and in your community and your city. Advocate for bird-friendly glass. Millions of birds are killed. A ridiculous number of birds are killed every year with bird glass collisions during migration, sometimes during the day and sometimes at night when they again become confused by the lights. And keep your cats indoors. I think it's something like 63 million birds are killed every year, estimated by feral cats or cats that are left outdoors. Okay, I like to end my presentations with a little musical interlude. This one I call Singing in the Rain. This is an ovenbird. There's the ovenbird and there's its nest. This one I encountered at Bowman's Hill this spring. I was giving a bird walk. It started to rain, so nobody else came, so I went by myself. And that's probably why I got the picture of this bird, because it was a magical experience being by myself in the light rain in the woods. And I was able to get this little guy. Let's see if we can hear him. He stops to fluff his feathers, get the rain off them. And then he sings again. And with that, oops, oh, now we won't go far. The end. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And any questions you have, I will try and show that Jean was wrong. I don't know everything, so. Yes.
We have a plate glass window that birds fly into, and I've been kind of researching different things to do with them. There are these long cords. Are they the best thing?
Probably your best bet. Just place them 4 inches apart. But that's what I have in my problem window after trying different things. The second best is screens. If you have a screen on the outside, that would be best.
If you could use that.
Oh, okay.
Right there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, okay. I'll try not to speak too loud now. So the parachute cords, they're called Acopian curtains. If you go to Acopian, just Google Acopian, you'll find plans on how to make them yourself. Use a piece of J-trough, I think they call it. It's like just basically an angular piece of plastic, and suspend these things. You can see through the windows. It doesn't block your vision. I like that because I take pictures of my bird feeders on the other side of this problematic window. I gave a little talk on why we needed to do this for another group a few years ago, where I took pictures of what my window looked like when the sun was shining on it. It looked exactly like the woods behind my house. It was a perfect, no wonder birds will fly into it. They just can't tell the difference between that and where. So the Acopian curtains will prevent that kind of bird glass collision. If you have windows that are lighted from the inside a lot, like on some of our big buildings, that's a different problem. You may need to use screens or a different type of bird-friendly glass that doesn't, that provides a lot of, you can use, some people use those stickers. They're supposed to reflect ultraviolet light. Well, there are a couple of things wrong. First of all, they don't work very well. And secondly, you would have to replace them because they lose the ability to reflect ultraviolet light after a while being outside. So the Acopian curtains are a really good, or Zen curtains are also called. really good option. Yes? Oh, ACOPIAN. And they have a lot of bird glass friendly ideas. That's a really, yes, when you, yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, what they see is it looks like there's an obstacle to that through passageway. There are some other films, if you've got big windows like that, or there's light from the inside, you can put a big film on the outside that consists of, one of the best is, it consists of a series of little dots that is less obtrusive to you if you want to look out the window, but it's also very effective if you don't feel like the parachute cords are the way to go. It just depends on what, the design of your house is. They do use those Acopian curtains at the Watershed Institute. I don't know if any of you have ever been there. On the Jersey side, they have a big window in their visitor center that was constantly killing birds. The Washington Crossing Audubon Society used to meet there, and we would get on their case every time in the spring, and you gotta do something about this. So they finally did, and it worked like a charm. So that would be what I would recommend if you can do it, as being the best for both worlds, best for the birds, best for you on the inside. Yes? Sure. Well, I think, yes, you can, because well, maybe you can. If you have 20 birdhouses, you're going to have a dead house wren as he tries to fill all of them. But I think in Birdhouse City, it is a little bit too crowded, for the martins especially. Most birds need a little privacy, and they also need some territory. Some of them have bigger territories than others. They don't want other birds near them. Some of them have very large territories. The broad-winged hawk I referred to earlier patrols a 1 mile in diameter circle in the sky over its nest, and it will viciously attack, and we saw this last year, something much bigger than itself, like a red-tailed hawk, and it will chase it out of the territory. So we have Cooper's hawks that come in during the winter, and they leave in the spring as soon as the broadwings arrive. So it depends on what birds you want to attract. And if it gets too crowded, and there are some different birds that want to move in, you're going to have a lot of stress on the birds that are already vested in their nests there as they're trying to repel the invaders. So I think that would be okay, given the species that use the birdhouses. That would not be too many.
My second question is, should you clean out the birdhouses, and if so, when?
Yes, you should clean them out in the fall. Some birds will have like 2 broods, sometimes 3. Wrens can have up to 5, but at this time of year, October is a good time. October, November, you can, and then you won't be flaunting the law either. There's a law that says you may not interfere with active bird nests. So you'll be fine in November, and nobody's going to come take you away. And just clean it out, because otherwise they get full of things like the eggs of what will become next year's bird mites, and that's not a good thing for the birds the following year. Yes.
I'm interested in finding out what communities can do about mouse and rat poisons.
Oh, gosh, I wish I knew. I think you just have to keep demanding that if this is something that your municipality uses, to stop doing it, or to pass some sort of a law stating that this, the American Bird Conservancy website has a lot of good resources for how people should approach their communities if they're trying to get solutions to some of these larger problems. So you can explore that website and find ways to approach people who are doing these sorts of things and get appropriate laws passed in your own community. That's probably the best way. The American Bird Conservancy, so that's ABC. And I think it's abc.org or americanbirdconservancy.org. If you Google the name, it should come up for you. That's an excellent resource. Yes?
The close-up shots you have of birds entering and leaving the nests or the houses, do you have some sort of a triggering mechanism set up to do those?
No, that one I just happened to be in the right place at the right time with my cell phone. So I saw this little guy and I thought, I don't think there was a wren in there before. So I took a, and I thought, when I saw that he was actually taking.
A lot of shots of birds entering or leaving the nest, feeding their young, it seems like.
Yeah. No. It's just I've been birding for a long time, about 50 years, and and I've been taking pictures for a long time. So sometimes I'm just in the right place. Yes. Mm-hmm. That's a really tough one. And you're not allowed to remove the wrens either because they're also protected under the migratory bird. Yeah, they are very, very aggressive, very aggressive. We tried to deal with that problem by putting up more bird houses to try and tire the wren out, and there doesn't seem to be any particular place where they won't nest, like whether it's in the woods, in the middle of the yard, on your house, wherever, they just will go. But what you might try is something other than a birdhouse, like maybe a gourd instead for things like chickadees, and hang them up deeper into, if you have some woods or under a tree, because the wrens seem to prefer the house to that kind of structure. So that might help, whereas other birds will use those too. Yes?
How far apart should birdhouses be? Because I have them in my other home, and bluebirds move into one, the chickadees move into the other, and then they're sitting there throwing each other's food.
Right.
And I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh my God, fight. So how far apart is better?
Well, again, when you're putting up bluebird houses, I think there's two ways of doing it. You can put two together, and if you put two together, you will often get a tree swallow in one, if you're in the right habit, tree swallow in one and a bluebird in the other. Tree swallows, for some reason, will tolerate bluebirds next to them. They will not tolerate another swallow. They have to be at least 20, 30 feet away. They won't tolerate starlings. They won't tolerate anything except, for some reason, bluebirds. And so they actually act as protectors. Bluebirds are very gentle little birds. I was examining a birdhouse at Bowman's Hill this summer, and a little male came and flew around my head once, and then went and glared at me from a branch, and that was all it did. If you do that and you're near nestling tree swallows that already have hatchlings, everybody in the neighborhood will come and they're buzzing around your head and everything. They're much more aggressive bird, and they actually protect the bluebirds. So encouraging tree swallows and bluebirds in the same thing. So you can put a double box and try and see if that will work for you. But otherwise, about 30 feet apart should work. Should work. Although the house wrens might still find them. I can't guarantee that. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, okay. I'll try my best. Bats? That's another tough one, because what I would suggest, if you really want bats, and we have them in our house, is that you put up some shutters on the sides of your windows, and you will get bats. We discovered that when we went to paint the house. My husband almost fell off the ladder. They're all, but you can try bat houses. They typically don't like them. If you put a bat house up on well, it depends if you want, or at our house in Ontario, we have an old barn that we use as a garage, and we have a breeding colony of big brown bats in that. So make a hole in your garage roof and have it closed off in the bottom. You will get bats moving in there or into your attic. But otherwise, it's really hard to get them to go and live in a house that you've prepared for them. So shutters, holes in your attic, or holes in your garage roof, and maybe you'll get bats. Oh, but you might already have bats. There's another type of bat, long-eared bats. If you have shagbark hickories with loose bark, they are a bat that's known to nest under the bark. They actually nest in trees, so you could try planting a lot of shagbark hickories. Another option. Not too helpful, I know, but bats will be bats. Anyone else? You would try me with something completely off. Let's see what I can do. Hi. Oh, okay.
I just want to mention that we put in 3 boxes for prothonotary warblers in the spring, and next spring we should have them. We put it in off of the canal, off of Black Rock Road. And so we should have, in those, some of the people in the room helped with the putting the boxes up. And also, Julie Pacini, who is the Birdtown person for Yardley, she is in the process of working with some people to put the a chimney. You were talking about the chimney swift. They're going to be putting a chimney swift tower in there. I'm not quite sure where they're going to be putting it, but we will have chimney swifts and prothonotary warblers that we have not had in the past. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, prothonotary warblers have specific habitat requirements. They do like to be near water and in marshy environments and in thick thickets of underbrush. So good luck. I hope you do get them because they're really beautiful. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate having been here. And I hope you all went home learning at least one new thing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And the tree canopy, when I moved here 50 years ago, was pretty decent. But in 2014, the EAC addressed that issue with a significant ordinance called the Tree Bank Ordinance. And the way this works is that when a developer cuts down a tree, and there's limitations on how many trees that can be cut down, the developer has to either plant more trees on site on a 4-to-1 ratio for a 10-inch tree. For a 30-inch tree, it's a 12-tree ratio, 2.5 to 3-inch caliber trees. Now, if they don't want to do that, we've established a fund called a tree bank, which is a specialized fund that can only be used, the money in that fund, to plant trees in public areas in Lower Makefield Township. Since the inception of the tree bank ordinance in 2014, we have collected over $800,000. In the 2016 plan that ended last year, we planted 1,000 trees and about 500 shrubs. The 2024 plan calls for the planting of 1,545 trees, 1,319 shrubs, and 1,500 perennials. And 2 days from now, we have a fall and spring planting. We'll be planting 165 trees in various places in the township. And these aren't twigs. These are 2.5 to 3-inch caliper trees that when a developer cuts down a tree and has to replace them with like a 10-inch tree is 4 of these, the cost is $450 a tree. So if a developer cuts down a 10-inch tree, $1,800 goes into the tree bank. So this is something that we're actually preparing a lecture on now, and we've talked to other municipalities about it, because to me it's a very, very simple concept. if you live in a community that development is taking place, to me, this is a no-brainer, and it's also legal. So the last thing is I want to thank Juanita again for that absolutely excellent performance.
And I was right? She does know everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, Juanita is also a naturalist at Bowman's Hill, and I am a naturalist as well. So, we're good friends and buddies. And I think, again, I want to just thank her very much for coming today. And thank you all for coming. And I hope to see you at some of our future events. Thanks again.